Getting a really excellent, open, full bass drum sound can be daunting at times, even overwhelming and super frustrating. The truth is, if you understand how a batter head, a resonant head, and muffling work together, you can bend this instrument to your will and make it do whatever you want. Today, we're going to focus on not just the final sound of this bass drum, big, punchy, open, but also controlled. We're also going to reverse engineer its sound and give you a peek behind the curtain as to how we make sounds with a bass drum here. It sounds like a drum. There are 3 words we want you to keep in mind over the course of listening to what we've done with this bass drum. They are attack, resonance, and sustain, which refers to the length of note. The final sound of this bass drum has several elements, and we are going to work in reverse order, starting with the final sound and peeling back layers until we get to the bare minimum so that you can hear and see how they're affecting our final sound. Let's give this drum a listen at its final stage. Now let's think about those 3 words again: attack, resonance, and sustain. Think about what you're hearing here. What does the attack feel like and sound like? How much resonance, how much fatness is there? And how long is the note that it's actually generating? Keep in mind that what you're hearing right now is raw, unmixed audio, so you need to be listening to this on headphones to really get the full scope of this sound. We are getting our desired sound out of this drum. It is round, it is fat, it has nice tone, but it's also controlled. Let's start dissecting this sound by removing elements of the drum, starting with the resonant head. Without the resonant head to control and sculpt the behavior of the batter head, it is now unleashed. It is big, it is boomy, and we don't have that punch and power that we had before when the resonant head was present. The resonant head stands as a barrier against the air that is coming off of the batter head when we strike it with the beater. This allows us to have a controlled sound and shorten that sustain into something that can be punchy and brief. It also serves as a way to foment and grow the low end of the bass drum, the lowest part of the low end, which is where the power comes from, which is the first thing we lose when we take it off. An awful lot of players think that exactly what we're talking about actually comes from muffling, and don't necessarily understand that the value of the resonant head is where the power lies in the instrument. You may have noticed now that the muffling inside of the drum looks a little unusual. It's not a big pillow or a bunch of foam or something you would normally see. In getting a big, round, and powerful tone that's still controlled, we don't want a ton of muffling. So we have a smaller piece of folded cloth that is touching both of the heads when they're installed, but not with a lot of pressure or weight. Part of the job of this muffling scheme is to muffle the heads, but it is serving a secondary purpose by quelling the echo chamber that occurs inside of this drum when we strike it. This is allowing us to avoid basketball-y, pingy overtones and focus the mid-range and the low end of the drum. But What, you may be wondering, is going to happen if we take this really small amount of muffling away and just hear the batter head by itself? Let's give a listen without the muffling, so we're down to just the batter head now. Okay, this is the craziest sound of the lot. It sounds synthetic and electronic and ultra wild, overtones and everything. This is where we start with a bass drum sound, how we tension the batter head. Everything else is in furtherance of this part of it. In the case of this bass drum sound, we have significantly more tension on the batter head than you might expect. This isn't jaw tuning. In order to get good tone, we have to have enough tension on the batter head itself to be able to utilize the energy that we're putting in with the pedal. By jacking up the tension on the batter head, we're also getting better rebound, which means playing faster is easier, and the drum gives us back a lot of the energy that we're putting into it. When you explore the constituent parts of a drum like this, you stumble on inspirational sounds. And when we got to this one and listened to it, it made me want to play in a totally different way than I had been inspired to play over the course of the other sounds. This is definitely our favorite part of exploring the constituent parts of a drum sound, is finding things along the way that are exciting, that you never expected. Now, let's flip the order. Let's start with just the batter head, and we're going to build it back up to get to our final sound. You can do this too. In fact, you should do this too. You should do it with your drums. You should do it with any drum that is available to you. The more that you experiment with different drums and understand why they're making the sound they're making, the more power you're going to have over every drum. This can lead to not only understanding why your drums sound how they sound, but also any drum you hear on a recording or at a show. Eventually, you'll have a Rolodex of possibilities, and when you sit down at a drum and you're feeling uninspired, you can make adjustments and get psyched again. The more you experiment, the more you're going to see patterns emerging. These patterns allow us to make predictions about the future. And if you can gain control of that, you can tune any drum any way you want.